Imagine a teenager standing in a busy, modern high school hallway, trying to navigate intense social pressures using a handful of memorized Arabic vocabulary words and historical dates. When Islamic facts are taught in isolation, floating out of context, they often fail to help a young person navigate a complex environment. Historically, Islamic education in the West leaned heavily on a default model. The priority was rote memorization, behavioral compliance, and teaching abstract theological concepts that rarely connected to a student's daily Tuesday routine. This table breaks down the resulting Islamic education gap. On the left, the traditional model emphasizes memorization. But look at the right side, the modern requirements. Today, students need identity integration, critical thinking, and practical application to survive their environment. This creates a severe dilemma for educators and parents. You desperately want to form your student's character, but you probably aren't an Islamic scholar. You lack a scalable, practical roadmap to bridge that gap. Enter the Muslim Legacy Series. This is a 14-year comprehensive curriculum spanning from pre-K through 12th grade, explicitly designed to solve this specific dilemma. Before looking at the pedagogy, we have to establish the theological baseline. The texts are formally certified and rooted in mainstream Islamic scholarship, answering any immediate questions about the authenticity of the doctrine. But having accurate information is easy. We are evaluating if the reality of these textbooks, teacher manuals, and student workbooks actually lives up to the promise of building a resilient, integrated Muslim identity. The core challenge for Muslim youth is integration. Solving that gap is the central promise of this series. This quadrant chart maps out the 14-year progression, tracking grade level against pedagogical approach. Looking at the lower left quadrant, the elementary approach is entirely concrete, grounding early learners in sensory stories and fostering an emotional love for the faith. To deliver this, it uses a narrator named Grandpa Siddiqui. He anchors the theology in a warm, familial voice, making complex ideas accessible to children. Returning to our chart, the plotline spikes in high school. The pedagogy pivots away from storytelling into rigorous intellectual defense. To match this cognitive leap, the narrator shifts to Dadi Bia. Her tone is analytical, scholarly, and challenging. There is a heavy trade-off to this design. Educators must adapt their teaching style year over year. Teaching a grade 8 module on social identity requires a completely different instructional approach than teaching grade 2 wudu habits. By aligning narrator voice and doctrinal depth with these cognitive leaps, the curriculum attempts to provide a structure for every stage of development. Take a look at this flowchart mapping out a framework that teacher manuals call the Type 2 classroom dialogue. Step 1. The manual anticipates a strong response from a student who hits the theological target. Step 2. It provides a partial response for a student who gets the facts right but misses the deeper meaning. Step 3. It includes an honest, off-track response, voicing real, uncomfortable doubts like, why do I actually have to pray? The manual instructs the teacher to validate this dissenting question. Instead of shutting the student down with a rigid rule, the teacher uses the doubt as the actual teaching material. This creates psychological safety in the room. Students learn through experience that wrestling with friction and asking hard questions is an expected part of the Islamic tradition. But this protocol demands immense emotional intelligence from the teacher. You have to actively suppress your own urge to quickly correct the student and move on. This method allows the classroom to become a laboratory for faith, provided the educator is willing to facilitate the messiness. Classroom theory is useless without application. To force these concepts into daily lifestyle practices, the curriculum relies heavily on the student workbooks and journals. This graphic illustrates how the curriculum builds its habit loop. Every lesson demands weekly action steps. A student might be assigned a fast of the tongue for 3 days, or asked to complete a written identity assessment. Crucially, there is a strict requirement for next week follow-up. The action step must be discussed and verified before the next lesson can begin. For the educator, you are shifting the burden of assessment. You move away from grading multiple-choice quizzes and take on the harder job of tracking a student's behavioral commitments. Islamic conviction in this system is assessed through the imperfect, ongoing habits practiced on a random Tuesday, rather than a Friday test score. The Muslim Legacy Series presents an effective architectural blueprint. It maps the route needed to transition a child from a foundational love of the religion to an intellectual defense of it. This matrix shows exactly who should adopt this curriculum. On the left is the perfect fit profile, populated by dedicated homeschoolers and progressive full-time Islamic schools. Full-time Islamic schools and engaged homeschooling parents will thrive here. But looking at the right side of the matrix, we warn you away if you run a rushed weekend program or a rote-focused administration. This is not a passive system. Substituting unqualified volunteers who just need a worksheet to keep kids quiet will stall the curriculum's mechanics. The Muslim Legacy series requires you to trade the ease of rote testing for the messy, demanding, and ultimately necessary work of raising a thinking, practicing, integrated Muslim.